General, thank you so much for your time this evening. Of course, MK's headquarters being in Lusaka, I would imagine that you met Kenneth Kaunda frequently. But could you take us back to the first time you met him and the circumstances?
Thank you so much, and thanks to the viewers. A giant has fallen. He's joining Julius Nyerere, he's joining Agostinho Neto, he's joining his good friends Oliver Tambo and lately Nelson Mandela. And we may remember that Kenneth Kaunda formed the United National Independence Party, UNIP, which broke off from Henry Nkumbula's African National Congress, and in 1964, as you said, led Zambia to independence, changing the name from Northern Rhodesia. We, as you may know, the ANC embarked on the armed struggle in 1961, and we had to go seek military assistance in more northern distant countries. And despite the fact that Zambia had not yet become independent, pre-1964, he led UNIP to be part of the struggle of the people of South Africa and indeed the entire Southern Africa. We met with Kaunda at different times, especially in meetings. I would be lying if I say one-on-one. I was too small for that. But Kaunda was a great friend of the African National Congress, of the MPLA in Angola, of the liberation movement in Zimbabwe, ZAPU, of Frelimo, and he dedicated the entire nation of the Zambian people in its very early stages of independence. In fact, let's say they never saw independence from 64 up to now when South Africa got liberated, all under the leadership of Kenneth Kaunda.
What did it mean to Mkhonto weSizwe for Kenneth Kaunda to allow the armed wing of the ANC to set up base in Zambia?
Well, it was quite understood that Zambia was going to be very vulnerable. As it were, Kenneth Kaunda closed his lifeline, railway lifeline, from Zambia's copper belt to South Africa through Rhodesia. And when Rhodesia, through Ian Smith, declared unilateral independence, he decided to punish that country by closing up his own line, of course meant to create sanctions against Rhodesia, but that put Zambia in a very, very vulnerable, economically vulnerable state. But Kaunda went ahead and allowed all liberation movements, not just the ANC, to set up in Lusaka. But there was an understanding that the responsibility must be shared. So there was Tanzania, there was Zambia, and I'm talking about even before the Portuguese colonies of Angola and Mozambique were free. So what it meant for the ANC, indeed, was that this was a commitment par excellence, a commitment that was saying, just like Nkrumah had said in 1957, Zambia would not be free until the entire Southern African region is free. And that's what it meant for us.
And as you say, he joins other African greats, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Oliver Tambo, Nelson Mandela, and many others. And that is an incredible chapter of African history. What would you say is Kenneth Kaunda's legacy for Africa and African liberation as a whole?
Commitment, consistency. Kaunda never wavered. Even when he was supporting us to the hilt, he opened up dialogue, especially with John Foster. You may remember in 1975, in Livingston, on the bridge at Victoria Falls, Kaunda called John Foster and his team, and he called the ANC and the Zimbabwean Liberation Movement to say, dialogue, let there be dialogue, let's talk about how we're not talking about chasing the white man into the sea, driving him back to Europe. We're talking about opening up political space for all population groups. And we didn't say, because Kaunda is now talking to our enemy, then he's selling us out. Throughout. Even when the ANC held the very historic conference in Kabwe, what used to be Broken Hill, in Kabwe in 1985, And that conference said, should the regime in South Africa want to open up to discuss, we're giving our leadership the freedom to open up. And Kaunda took this thing up. And in 1986, he hosted top South African businessmen and academics, but especially the businessmen led by Anglo-Americans, Gavin Raleigh, and at a game reserve in Luangwa, the ANC leadership met with the South African businessmen to unlock the impasse that was happening, where the South African government could not entirely destroy the liberation movement, nor were we in a position to destroy that powerful military state that South Africa was. But at the center of all this was Kenneth Kaunda, and we'll remember him for that. When Oliver Tambo got a stroke in Lusaka, it was Kaunda who ensured that very quickly he links up with Tiny Roland of Rio Tinto to arrange that he goes to London for for medical treatment. And there are so many things that Kaunda did. He gave his land to us, to all the freedom fighters. His country was bombed, both in the rural areas, in their military installations, in the towns. Our houses were bombed all the time, and the Zambians never wavered. And that was under the leadership of Kenneth Kaunda.
A great friend to South Africa's liberation struggle, and a great giant in Africa, as you say, has fallen. Thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. That is retired MK Major General Keith Mokwape. And thank you very much for your time this evening. Well, Kenneth Kaunda led Zambia from 1964 to 1991 after taking the helm at the end of British rule.